Well, hey, everybody. Let's get ready to do Mike in the Midwest, episode 117. It's homecoming. Let's do it. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 117 of Mike in the Midwest, a mini podcast for the amazing patrons just like you of the Be Our Guest podcast. My name is Mike Roman, host of the Be Our Guest podcast, which you can find, of course, you know this at beourguestpodcast.com. But if you are not following me on the social media, what's going on? I want to talk to my fans. I want to talk to my friends. I want to talk to my co-Disney fans. Let's talk Disney. Let's talk football. Let's talk anything that you like. I love meeting up with you guys. Hit me up on Twitter and Instagram at Be Our Guest Mike. Let's talk this week. I would love to reach out to you. Social media is awesome, but it's only awesome when you get to meet friends from all around the world. So again, Be Our Guest Mike, Twitter and Instagram. I'm on there every day. So send me a message. We will talk. So I'm glad we are back, and I hope you are having a great week. Again, this week is going to be a little rough on the big show on the Be Our Guest podcast because my voice still has not returned from a crazy Saturday night in Columbia, Missouri, out at the zoo at the Mizzou, Georgia game. I gave all for old Mizzou, and we tried to pull one off there. We tried to pull off the victory against the old number one ranked national defending champion Georgia Bulldogs. We came so close. And if you only knew, this is such a Mike in the Midwest topic. Some fan bases are long suffering, and there's some of you guys out there will relate, some of you will not. I had this discussion with a Georgia fan, a grandma that was sitting in front of us at the game. I'll talk about that in just a second. But there's some fan bases I know that can relate to this. I would assume that like Boston Red Sox fans can probably relate to this. Trying to think. New York Jets football fans possibly could probably relate to my plight. Trying to think other sports. Just the teams that every once in a while your team gets good, but it's not very often. It might be once in a generation. The Mizzou football Tigers were awesome. We were almost ranked number one in the country right when Mallory was born in 2008. If Mallory would have been a boy, we were going to name her Chase after the quarterback at the time of the Mizzou Tigers, Chase Daniel, who's now the backup for the San Diego Chargers. That's how we are a Mizzou family through and through. I've been a Mizzou fan my entire 48 years of my existence. I love Mizzou. I've always listened to Mizzou on the radio. I didn't go to Mizzou. Kind of shocking for a lot of people. I couldn't afford it. So I went to Missouri Baptist College here in St. Louis because I got a scholarship for baseball and academics. Couldn't afford the big school, but I always loved Mizzou. You know, it's the aspirational university for somebody like me. So I've always followed their sports, always been a fan, listened to the basketball games, the football games on the radio and so forth. So I've always been a Mizzou fan, and we've had good basketball teams in the 80s for little brief moments. And man, we had a really good football team in like the 2008, 2009 and the Big 8, Big 12. And then we got really, we a couple of years, we made it to the SEC championship game, 2013, 2014, played Auburn and then played Alabama. So we were like there. We were a good SEC football team there right as we came into the league. So we have been good in the past, but it's very rare. It's a flash in the pan and then we suffer. We suffer for long periods of time. So Georgia comes to Mizzou, and we almost had a chance to beat the big guys on Saturday night. So, of course, we go to the game. We're not having a great year. We're kind of rebuilding. We go to the game, Pam and I driving, because we live about, if you don't know, we don't live where Mizzou plays. When we go to the Mizzou game, it's about a 2-hour drive because we're in St. Louis, basically, the St. Louis Metro, which is on the very eastern side of the state of Missouri. And where Mizzou is, it's dead in the center of the state. And so Kansas City is on the far west side of the state of Missouri. In right north-south, it's dead in the middle. So if you're going from Columbia, which is where Mizzou is, it's 2 hours west will put you in Kansas City. 2 hours east will put you in St. Louis. So it's right dead in the middle of the two big cities, which is kind of nice, I guess, for Columbia. So anyway, every time we go to a game, we got to drive 2 hours west out to Columbia. It's a nice little drive. It's beautiful, especially this time of year. Lots of trees, changing colors and so forth on Interstate 70. So we expect, it's a 6:30 game. Finally, we got a night game, which is always way more fun than an 11 o'clock game because we usually get the 11 o'clock game because we get bad games. You don't want the 11 o'clock game. It's kind of gotta get out there, gotta leave the house at 8 o'clock in the morning at the latest, and that's not fun. So we get a night game. It's always more fun at night. Everybody's pumped up. People have been partying all day. We weren't, but people have been tailgating all day. We get out there at about 5:30. Go to the famous pizza joint called Shakespeare's with our Pam's sister and her husband and their kid, my little nephew, have really good Shakespeare's pizza, make our way over, park the car, and go to the game. Honestly, Pam and I both expected by halftime the game would be out of control because we're playing Georgia. They're the number one team in the country. And we might leave, sometime into the third quarter or so because Pam had to get up super early at like 7. They had to leave the house on Sunday morning to take Mallory and 3 of her friends that were spending the night to a cheerleading competition at another college here in St. Louis. So she was going to have to be out of the house by 7 a.m. on Sunday morning. So we thought, oh, it'll be a bad game. This one, it'll be out of hand. Georgia was favored by 30 points. So we thought, this is one. Hopefully, coach won't see us sneak out early out of our seats. We'll duck out early. Well, we take a 3-0 lead. Everybody in the stadium starts taking pictures of the scoreboard. We've got pictures of Mizzou beating Georgia as the defending national champions, the number one ranked team in the land. Then we go up 10-0. And we hold the lead through halftime. People are going crazy at halftime because we have the lead. We have the lead until we held the lead for the first 52 minutes of the game. Georgia comes back and beats us. 8 minutes left in the game. Tough loss. And of course, we had Georgia fans sitting directly in front of our seats and our season tickets. They were very nice, but when I started complaining about how Mizzou fans never get the calls from the officials, because in I get this, like the SEC would rather Georgia win than Mizzou win, because if Mizzou upsets Georgia, it's bad for the conference because they definitely want Georgia in the national playoff picture with Alabama. That's good for them. So I would assume that they would want Georgia to win. Well, I said that out loud, and this grandma Georgia fan turns around and that isn't true. I'm like, it is true. I'm like, I'm also an Alabama fan, and I know that sometimes Alabama gets the calls. It is very true. I'm not saying you're getting the calls. Until you've been a Mizzou fan for your entire life, you are not allowed to tell me that we don't get we get bad calls against us, because we do. I've seen it my entire life. I was like, you're living the good life. And I was like, and I'm an Alabama fan, and I know sometimes Alabama gets the benefit of the doubt on calls too. That's just how the world works. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. That's how it's going to be. And so just, okay, you're getting the calls tonight. Turn around and just enjoy the game and enjoy that you're getting your calls. It's just how it's going to be. We're not changing anything. Nobody's getting up here asking us how we're calling the game. So she got a little fired up. Pam got a little, she's like, you can't do that. She's a grandma. I'm like, I wasn't yelling at her. I was explaining what it means to be a long-suffering Mizzou fan. We're hardly ever on the top. And it just hurts because it was, we were getting kind of miffed over by the fans. Then Pam gets a beer spilled on her by a guy in a Michigan hoodie. Twice, sitting behind us. We're at a Georgia Mizzou game. Dude's got on a Michigan hoodie. What's he doing? Why is he at a Mizzou Georgia game, drunk, spilling beer on my wife? So then I had to have a few words with him. Like, I don't care if you have beers, don't spill them on my wife. So it was intense. It was the crowd was wild. It was fun. It was everything a football game should be on a Saturday night in mid-Missouri. We had a good time. But that, long story short, that's what happened. That's why I have no voice. Not only was I screaming, Stetson, it's Stetson Bennett Jr., the quarterback, for 3 solid hours. I was defending myself. I was defending my wife. I was explaining how it is to be a Mizzou fan when the officials get you for 48 years. It was wild. So if you ever want to go to a football game with me, let's go. Because I promise you, I'm an active participant in SEC football. When I go, I'm all in. I wear the gold. I wear the black. Some years we might be 2-10. I'm still a Mizzou fan. I will always be a Mizzou fan. I love my school. We're not always the best school, but I will always love my Tigers, and I think that's what a true fan should be. Win or lose, good season or bad, you still wear the colors. You fly the flag on the front of your house on Saturdays, And that's how it is. I think that's how it is definitely here in the Midwest. And I know it's that way everywhere in the country, but I think that passion is definitely strong in the Midwest, where we're from totally, because that's kind of the focus of our show. So that's one of the things that's happened this week as we go over what's happened this week. Another thing that happened this week to spice up our week is that on Friday, I'm sitting here kind of wrapping up, Friday afternoons, right? You're getting ready to, Friday afternoon, you're getting all your work done. You're thinking, for me on Friday afternoon, we always go out to get Mexican early, like at about 4:30. We go to our local Mexican place and we get our Mexican, and then we go to the football game. We go to the H, and Francis Howell had a home football game. Actually, no, wait. Last week we had no, wait, last week we didn't have a football game on Friday. We had it on Saturday because we were at homecoming at another school. Yeah, last week was kind of confusing. Last week we didn't have Friday Night Lights. We had a trivia we were supposed to go to, but we didn't get to go to that. So because I get a call on Friday afternoon, Mallory twisted her ankle at practice and had to go pick her up from the high schools. Now she's in a walking boot and it's homecoming week. So we got all this stuff happening and everything, all the plans have been up in the air because of course this happens the week of homecoming at her high school. Homecoming is this Friday. All these plans have been made. She was on crutches all weekend in this big cast. Now she's in a walking boot. That's better. But everything's up in the air. So that's been an adjustment since Friday. Trying to figure all that stuff out. It's been crazy. So we are working through things. It is homecoming week. That's going to be the topic of today's big show. But things are going, pretty good here. We're pretty excited that we got good weather. I mean, we have had solid weather here in the Midwest for probably a good 2 or 3 weeks. Highs in the like mid to upper 70s, lows in the upper 40s. We haven't had a lick of rain. We need some rain here again. I sound like an old guy, but we do need some rain because it has not rained here in forever. And I'd be remiss if I don't mention that last week when we recorded on Tuesday, we did not know how Hurricane Ian was going to go. We knew the hurricane was coming. We didn't know exactly where. We didn't know exactly when. We didn't know exactly how serious it would be. And of course, this hurricane was almost a category 5, definitely a strong category 4. And it hit down in Fort Myers and Sanibel Island and all those areas right there on the Gulf Coast, southwestern Florida. And I'm telling you what, we've been saying our prayers here every night for those communities because they were devastated. And that was a horrible, horrible storm. I know that we're all um, Disney fans, and we were all probably pretty excited that for the most part, the hurricane spared the greater Orlando area. They got a lot of rain, they got a lot of flooding, got some winds, but for the most part, they escaped the wrath of the main part of the storm. But you know, I think they say with hurricanes, like one man's good fortune is another man's bad luck. And that part, down by Fort Myers just got devastated. So we are thinking about everybody that is down in that area. We hope your community rallies together and we hope that you rebuild quickly and that you get everything you need. We're here thinking of you. We're praying about, for your families, for your communities, and supporting you in any way we can. So we don't want to see you in, hurting. And we've seen the pictures and we know that the assessment's going on at this point, and that folks are trying to bounce back. So we're thinking of you and we hope that everybody is safe that listens to our show and that your families and your friends are all safe as well. All right, let's hit the feedback from last week's show. Speaking of hurricanes, last week I shared what it was like to be at Walt Disney World in 2004 during Hurricane Charley, which was a category 2 as it passed over the resort in the middle of the night. So it was a category, I think it was a category 3 or 4 as it was out over the water, but it maintained a category 2 strength still as it passed over Walt Disney World with winds at about 100 miles an hour. It was nuts. So if you want to hear that show, go back to last week. And we did get a couple of pieces of feedback from folks about their experiences with hurricanes. And Deanna, thanks Deanna for being a patron. I appreciate you. She says, growing up on the Gulf Coast of Texas, I definitely have some hurricane stories. My senior year of high school in 2005, Hurricane Rita hit our area. This was a few weeks after Katrina. So basically, everyone in the greater Houston area was evacuated. As you could predict, this wreaked havoc on our highway system. A trip that would have normally taken us 4 hours took 22. People were running out of gas on the highway because the gas stations were all out. We had to drive a lot of the trip with no air conditioning to preserve gas. We finally found a station with gas just as we were about to run out. I remember my mom pretty much crawling in the gas station freezer to cool off after hours in a car with no air conditioning in the Texas heat. We spent the next few weeks on a grand tour of extended families' homes, waiting for the power to be restored back home. A few years later, there was a storm that was supposed to be a tropical storm, but intensified overnight and hit us as a category 1. We were about 30 miles inland, so it was pretty intense, although somehow less intense than a 22-hour evacuation with no air conditioning. The next year, we got Hurricane Ike, and it flooded most of the area with storm surge. Remembering all this makes me glad we moved inland. Definitely praying for everyone in Florida as Ian is hitting today. Deanna, thank you for your memories, and I can only think about how horrible that would have had to been on that evacuation. When Katrina hit, of course, I was in St. Louis, and I was teaching sixth grade at the time, and it's amazing that the impacts of Hurricane Katrina impacted me in St. Louis, but it did because when that hurricane hit, it devastated that New Orleans area so bad that I got 2 new students in my class that year because they evacuated so far north. They came to St. Louis to be with family, and they start like you said, they lived with extended family for the remainder of the school year that year. And I got a student named Genevieve. I remember she was so bright, and it was such a blessing to have her in our 6th grade class because she was just a great, I mean, wonderfully bright kid, but she was also very social. And she taught us so much about what it was like to live in the deep South and what it was like to live in New Orleans. Because to us in St. Louis, we're both kind of on the Mississippi River, our cities. But the stories she would tell us about the foods they ate down there and the stuff they did and what it was like, the homes, the historic areas, because I was very much about, if you're willing to share with the other students, please tell us about your upbringing. And she definitely was. And she had her mom come in one day and tell some stories and bring some stuff. And our class was blessed to have Genevieve as a part of our class there for a few months after Hurricane Katrina. So even though that storm was devastating and rocked and just, I mean, God, the images of that were terrible, the Superdome, all that stuff, in a way, so many of my life was impacted in a positive way because Genevieve, a 12-year-old 6th grade student, came up to St. Louis, North St. Louis County, and became a part of our class. And we all got to learn about her culture and the things, and she shared about what it was like in the days after as they evacuated and how hard that was. And I appreciated what I had, how we have the safety in St. Louis away from big storms like that. And I hope that my 6th graders, I tried to let them know to, count your blessings. We don't have to worry about hurricanes in St. Louis. We have to worry about tornadoes. We have to worry sometimes about earthquakes. They always say the big ones get hit here. We don't get them often, but they always say we're like lined up for the New Madrid fault, like for the big earthquake. But we're pretty lucky. And Genevieve added a lot to our class. So Deanna, thanks for those stories. I'm glad you're safe, and I'm glad you're inland now. But just like you, praying for everybody in Southwest Florida. Jody Benning, my good friend out in Cincinnati, Ohio. Thanks for being a patron. She says, Mike, thanks for sharing your personal story on being at Walt Disney World in a hurricane. I'm sure it was quite frightening for you, Pam and Paige. The current images of the destruction in Florida are so heartbreaking. Prayers to everyone impacted. Believe it or not, back in 2008, we actually had remnants of Hurricane Ike, bringing wind gusts of more than 75 miles an hour, consistent with a Category 1 hurricane, too much for the Cincinnati area. I never thought we'd have a hurricane issues in the Midwest. Tornadoes, yes. Hurricanes, no. It really gave me a new perspective on the intense damage a hurricane can have. Again, praying for those impacted and thankful for the efforts of the police, fire, rescue workers, and volunteers. Amen to that. Those folks who rush in when everybody else is evacuating, absolutely heroes. The people who are out there right now, because We know how miserable it is at Walt Disney World when we're just vacationing. Oh, it's humid. Oh, it's hot. I'm just standing in line to ride Kilimanjaro safaris. How about a guy that's up on a telephone pole trying to get the electricity going back? Or somebody that's digging out debris looking for survivors, heroes, unsung heroes everywhere down in Florida today. Thanks for bringing that up, Jody. I appreciate you and I appreciate that feedback. Now, if you have feedback on today's show or any other topic you want to talk about, this Patreon show is all about us. It's about you. So please, this week, swing by patreon.com/be our guest podcast. It will be read on next week's podcast. I never miss any of the feedback. I love reading it. I love getting to build our little mini community here because this is a really cool thing. So again, come on by, leave your feedback, patreon.com/be our guest podcast. All right, to the big show, to the big topic today. It is homecoming week here at the H in the Francis Howell School District. This Friday night, of course, is the big high school football game, homecoming football game. And I thought I'd give you a little perspective on my homecoming memories from in the past and a little tidbit to kick off the homecoming talk. I don't know if you know this or not, but homecoming, just so you know, and some other schools claim this, but it's not true. Homecoming was invented at the University of Missouri, Columbia. That's right. Mizzou is the university that brought about the idea of a homecoming celebration. Look it up. It is true. And so we are very proud of that as Mizzou Tigers. That homecoming is a tradition that was developed, invented by Mizzou. So we do it well out in Columbia. Now, it's not homecoming week for Mizzou. That'll be October 22nd. You always know because you got to play a cupcake that week in football. And this year, it's against Vanderbilt. So that's in 2 weeks. Sorry, Vandy. Hopefully we win. We don't always win, but we try. But this week in our high school, it's homecoming. So this Friday, the ceremonies will kind of culminate with a football game against Timberland. All the cheerleaders all cheer the game. All the Golden Girls, our dance squad, will all dance. At halftime at the football game, of course, they'll announce the homecoming king and queen, and then they have the big homecoming dance, like always, on Saturday. So that's kind of how that stuff. Of course, it is Spirit Week at the high school. Every day there's another, thing to dress up as a theme. I think today was Zoom Day. Business up top, casual down bottoms, like shorts on the bottom, but you got to look up top like you're having a Zoom meeting. So you have your shirt and your tie on. Pretty cool idea. I saw some pictures today on social media. It was pretty funny, actually, because it wasn't just, it was the students and the staff that got in on the act. It was a pretty cool thing to do. It was pretty funny. But I thought I'd talk about some of the memories. Now, again, I've been out of high school forever, and I went to the same high school that Ricky went to, Hazelwood Central. Of course, we went about 10 years apart. She's a little bit younger than me, but never missed a homecoming dance when I was in high school. Never missed actually any of the dances we had at high school. I was involved in sports and we did everything. You didn't miss. You were involved in everything when I went to high school. And when I'm thinking back at my high school memories, the way it worked for us at our school was that we did the same thing they do at Francis Howell. We had Spirit Week leading up. So every day leading up, we had a theme day, just like they're doing this week. So we'd dress up. And Friday was always the day that you wore, in my case, at Hazelwood Central, was black and gold day because we were the Hazelwood Central Hawks. And our colors were just like Mizzou, black and gold. That's why I love black and gold. I've been in black and gold my whole life. So we would, wear black and gold. I was always involved in sports. You'd wear your sporting, jersey or whatever on Friday. There'd be a pep assembly. Now, I don't know if they still have pep assemblies like we did back in my day in high school. Because again, Hazelwood Central, when I went to high school in the early 90s, we were always one of the top ranked football teams in the state, just kind of like our high school we live at now at Francis Howell. They're ranked number 2 in the state currently. So there's a lot of parallels to the school Mallory goes to and the school that I went to. And so we would get the entire school in our large gym, and we'd have these awesome pep assemblies. I mean, they'd be nuts. The band would be playing the fight song. We had a huge marching band. You'd have the football team announce, basketball team would come out and dunk basketballs. Cheerleaders would be out there, the Hawkettes, the dancers. and everybody get fired up for the football game. Now, here's the thing though. At our high school, we had the football game was on Saturday. We never had Friday night lights because at our high school, we didn't have lights back then. We didn't have lights on our football field. So our football games were always Saturday mornings at 11 o'clock. Now, the way it kind of went for us back at our in Hazelwood Central was Friday night, we didn't have anything. But Saturday morning, we had a varsity soccer game that started at I think 9:30. Preceding the varsity soccer game, we had a homecoming parade in our community. So we would have a parade that started like at 8 o'clock in the morning, and that'd be for like the homecoming queen candidates, the freshman people, the sophomores, the juniors, the seniors. Of course, the band would walk in the parade. You would have all the sports teams. You would have the younger sports teams from all around the community. It was a lot of fun. Basically, it was just kind of like a Halloween slash homecoming parade, and we'd go around, a few subdivisions in our community and end up at the high school. One of the stories I can tell you about is that one of the years, the girl I was dating was one of the candidates for homecoming queen, and so she was in the parade. And at the time, my car was a 71 MGB convertible, and it was bright orange. Well, it just happened that homecoming was on Halloween day. It was October 31st. And so for her float that she rode on, we decorated if you look it up, like do a Google image search. A 71 MG convertible kind of already looks like a pumpkin. So we just made it look more like a pumpkin, and she rode on the back looking like Cinderella. And so I drove this little 71 MGB convertible. It was awesome. She didn't win Queen that year, but we had a good time riding together in that MG convertible throughout our homecoming parade. Then we went to the soccer game. She was a Hawkette, so she had to dance at halftime. Then after the soccer game went from like 9 to 11. Then you'd go over to the football field, which was on the other side of campus, and you'd do a beat down of some weak high school team, crush them on homecoming Saturday. The football game would go from like 1 to 4. You go home, wash up, and the dance would be in the commons. It's 7, usually like 7 to 10. And the thing was, when we went to dances, I don't know how this is anymore. Um, but I mean, as I remember back in the day, we'd go like I remember like with my buddies, we'd have to go to the mall to get our outfits for the dance. And some years you'd wear like a sport coat, you'd get a tie and like a nice shirt, and you wouldn't wear jeans, you'd wear like slacks, right? Again, I sound like I'm like from Leave It to Beaver. It wasn't like that. We'd go like to merry-go-round, or there was a store called Oak Tree. We'd get our outfits there. There was other stores at the mall, but back then the mall was the place you went. You got your outfits, right? And you would of course have to order your corsage for your date, and that would have to match her dress. So you'd have to know what color her dress was. You would try to get your outfit to kind of match the color of her dress. That was always a big deal. Getting all that coordinated. And of course, you would have to figure out where you were going with your buddies and their dates, because you would either go to dinner before or after. One of the places that was a couple places we went to dinner many times before homecoming. Homecoming was always the dance in the fall. And then in the spring, we had basically a second homecoming, but it was called Turnabout. And that was just where the girls asked the guys. But I mean, I always dated the same girl. So it was basically just the same thing. A lot of the guys I dated, we had the same girlfriends for a long time. So it was kind of the similar thing. But we'd go to dinner. There was a couple places. One was Casa Guillardo, which was kind of an upscale Mexican restaurant, sit down Mexican. It was kind of like if you're a Walt Disney World fan, which you are, it was kind of like La Hacienda, kind of that type of food. And ironically enough, here's the funny thing. My wife, Pam, was a server at Casa Guillardo for years. Even when she was a teacher, she still was a server at Casa Guillardo on weekends to make extra money. So she worked there later on, which was kind of funny. Um, but yeah, we would go there. Another place we would go to was a place called Robatos, which was a Japanese hibachi place at the top of this big tower called Westport. And it was just fun because you get all your buddies and the dates around the outside of the table. The guy would come and do the hibachi thing at the table, and that was always kind of fancy, right? It was expensive. But yeah, we would do dinner. we go to the dance, and of course, the commons would have all the decorations. It'd be a theme like under the sea or there's always a theme, into the night or, whatever. They're always corny little themes, and they'd have the decorations hanging down from the ceiling, and the DJ would be there with all of his lights and fog machines, and everybody would dance, and they were great. We had a good time, and we always had a blast. The ironic thing is that after I graduated from Hazelwood Central, I ended up being the DJ for these dances for about the next 5 or 6 years. So, like, I was at these dances forever because we owned a big DJ company in St. Louis. Now, we didn't do the DJing when I was in school. Thank God it wasn't my dad or anybody like that. That could not have happened. But once I graduated, I did end up being the DJ for Hazelwood Central, Hazelwood West, McClure North, all the schools around us, and that's kind of what I did in the fall. But they were just a good time. And then after the dance, of course, you go back to one of your buddy's friends. We went back to my buddy's Corey's house, hung out in his basement, played Nintendo, just got Taco Bell, ate again. We were always eating, having a good time. And homecoming was I don't really recall. Again, I didn't care, but I don't ever really recall people coming back to Hazelwood Central. It was more just an opportunity to get together and have a dance in the fall, which was a blast. But I'm excited because as an adult, I get to see Mallory's going to go to homecoming dance, and we'll go to the big homecoming football game on Friday night. But what it really is on this side as a parent, it's a community rallying together and celebrating the fall, celebrating your community, right? We're going to celebrate Francis Howell. We're going to celebrate where we are, and we're going to celebrate our football team. We're going to celebrate our cheerleaders, our dancers. We're going to celebrate our community. And that's what we're going to do on Friday night. And I'm sure you do that where you are too. So I would love, this is why I'm excited, because I wanted to share some of my memories. And I'll see if I can find a couple of homecoming pictures this week and put them on Instagram. They're terrible. I had a mullet because, again, it was that time. And I'm in the Midwest. We had mullets and I had braces. So it was pretty bad. But I'll see if I can find some pictures. And if I can, I'll put them on Instagram. I promise. They're terrible. But I want to hear your either current homecoming traditions in the community where you live, whether it's East Coast, West Coast, Deep South, up in the Northeast, whatever. How does your community celebrate homecoming? And even better, what are your memories from homecoming when you were in high school? What do you remember? Did you go to Oak Tree? Did you go to merry-go-round? Did you get the corsage or the boutonniere? How did you dress for the dance? How did that all go? How were your sporting events, football, soccer, all that stuff? Share those at patreon.com/BeOurGuest Podcast, and we'll have a great time sharing those stories next Tuesday. But until we get together again, you guys have a great week. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you real soon. Oh, mercy. You guys have a great week. See you later.